Welcome to fucking Rad Snowboarding Podcast. I'm Shred Jesus, and this is our 5th episode. So yesterday was like the best day of my life, and somehow today was even better because of the snow. Like, oh my God, waiting for snow was so hard, and now having 3 feet of powder in my backyard is like the best thing ever. I'm sorry if you live on the East Coast. I know you're hurting. That sucks. We were there last year. But let me tell you, it gets so much better when the snow falls. It's the best thing ever. I was riding lines today that were steep, sunny, blower pow. And I've been waiting for years now, 2 years, to just go and do that. And I got to do them all untracked. It was like a dream come true. And it was only marginally better than yesterday, which was still one of the best days of my life. I had a plan to meet up with Mike Ranquet down at Baker. We didn't set a time or a place. So I'm just at this huge resort looking around. There's 8 different chairlifts he could be on. And I see a guy riding down all smooth. And I just hop on the chairlift with that guy. And I'm like, you don't happen to know where Mike Ranquet is, do you? He's like, oh yeah, he stayed at my house last night. He's riding with Tex over on chair 1. And I was like, oh my God, you're Jeff Fulton. Dude, I've got a recorder in my pocket right now. Could I record this chairlift ride? And he said, sure. So that's today's episode, is actually yesterday on the chairlift with Jeff Fulton. So how did the MBHC come into existence?
Well, it was me and my buddy Eric Swanson. Well, there's a crew of us. My parents owned a bike shop in Mount Vernon. Through them, I met these guys, Tom Raven and Eric Gallison, and those guys introduced me to snowboarding, and through them I got all fired up and ordered some boards into my parents' bike shop, but I couldn't get any of my skiing buddies to go try out the snowboarding thing, and so we had a BMX team, and Craig Kelly and Dano and a few of those guys were on our BMX team, and I was the guy that had to drive them around because I was a little older. So I just grabbed him one day and said, you're going to go up and go snowboarding with me because no one else will do it with me. And kind of the rest is history from there as far as those guys go. But then, and that was early on, and we were just up here hiking around because we weren't even allowed on the lifts yet. And then finally we approached Duncan, and he allowed us to ride the lifts. And one day me and my buddy Eric Swanson were riding up chair 5 over there, and we got off the chair, and we were riding down under chair 5 down Gobbles, and it was blowing so hard that we were pointing straight downhill and barely going because the wind was blowing uphill so hard, and the wind was blowing and starting, and we're like, man, this is hardcore. And then we're like, yeah, Mount Baker hardcore. And that was it, and then we wrote it on I wrote it with a felt pen on my board, and then I did that, and then Eric Janko and Carter Turk were lifties, and they ran chair 6, and they came and rented a board from my parents' shop because they saw us on them, and they tried it out, and then, of course, they became the next members of the MBHC, So the original core crew were Craig, Dano, myself, Eric Swanson, and then Eric Janko, Carter Turk, and then more people came on after that, like Ranquet. And
what year would that have been?
83, I would say, is about when that happened. 83 or 84, because I was riding the very first Sims 1500 FE Swallowtail.
Sick.
No edges. And then that's another funny story I'll tell sometimes, is the fact that the very first Sims boards, if you see pictures of Kidwell and those guys, and they have a gray bottom board with a black stripe along the edge. All those, our friend Eric Gallison had connections at K2, so he was able to get ski edge stock and P-Tex, and so Tom would make all his boards, ship them up to Seattle to the bike factory shop. Those guys would router them out, lay in edges, glue in a piece of P-Tex.
Oh my God.
And then ship them all back to Tom, and then he'd ship them out to all the customers.
That's incredible.
And that went on for 2 seasons until they figured out to, pre-lay in edges beforehand. But for a while there, so any of those old photos you see where they're gray bottom boards, especially like Kidwell's and a few of those guys, you can tell the boards just by the black stripe running. It's about, 1/4 inch wide black stripe running along the edge, because the only P-Tex you'd get from K2 was black. Yeah, so that's kind of a story. Mike Olson, yeah, he's like the true mad scientist of snowboard. And it's funny because I remember running into him. We were hiking at down at Snoqualmie or whatever, and I ran into him and his buddy. It was Pete, and I think maybe the dude Mervin. And that was like before they were just making their own boards. They hadn't really even come out yet. And they were we were on like Burton the back hill of Burton Performer experimentals. You know, the blue board with the white graphics.
Yep.
We were riding those, and then he had these boards, and those were like 150s or something. You know, they weren't very big. And he had these boards that were just freaking huge, super long snowboards. And then he had fins on the back, which Burton did, and then up on the nose, where it was real long, he had a couple fins up on the nose. So he was already thinking of, you know, like carving more than just fish turning, you know, which
right.
All the old boards, you know, that's the way we kind of did was fish turn style, you know. And so he was already kind of thinking about the carve, and so of course Mervin was the first one to come up with, like, I remember it was like real side cut and, you know, like carve, don't slide, you know. And
Mike Olson probably affected snow sports more than
yes.
any other person.
Yeah, I think you're right. And he was also, you know, when everyone else was just sticking with standard procedures, he was the first one. Well, let's make a cat board. Let's see, you know, let's make a hollow core. Let's try this. You know, he was willing to try anything. And this is you know, because he was hooked up or had connections at Boeing Aerospace, he had the ability to get all these elusive materials that other companies couldn't get their hands on. You know, and that's why he was experimenting with all these different things, you know, like, let's try UMFH sidewalls, and, you know, all this weird stuff. That's how the whole lid thing came around, too, is, you know, when they lost GNU that first time to whoever it was, I can't remember who bought GNU back then. Windline, yeah, when they lost GNU to Windline, and he wasn't willing to just let them keep, you know, and they were just like, oh, we're just going to make all the boards in Austria, you know, that's when all those crappy ones were coming out.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, we'll just make our own, we'll just start another company.
Yeah.
Liberace Technology. And then also, I love the fact that he was the one that, like, when snowboarding was like, oh, we have to grow up and we can't be like skateboarding. We can't have skulls and blah, 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 you know.
Yeah.
And so he did the full skeleton on the whole board. He's like, oh, yeah? Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can stay as young as we want, man.
Yeah.
This is our sport. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, I love that. I love those guys, and I think that Mervin's one of the coolest companies just for that, you know.
Still now, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. So, you've lived up here the whole time?
I grew up in Mount Vernon, right down the Skagit Valley, and through snowboarding, slowly migrated up to Glacier, and lived up here for quite a while, and then, you know, moved to Bellingham for a while because had to work, you know, do construction work, and was there because I got tired of driving, and for a while there I was just kind of took time off from snowboarding. I didn't snowboard much for a while in the early 2000s, just because the mountain was kind of overrun. I was kind of bitter about it, you know, but then I came to the realization that it's going to be busy, and now I just have to not worry about people or traffic or the amount of people, and just go, if they're going one way, just go the other direction, because there's still plenty of stuff to ride up here. Maybe it just means I'm not getting as many runs down Harry Scary or Dolphies, you know, or, you know, Flying the Wall or something, but I'll just go ride lower angle stuff if people are riding that. It kind of works out. There's a faster cycle than even in skateboarding with snowboarding. It's really like the newest and next flavor. But I see it's finally, in the last year or so, it's finally seeing, you know, now that it's getting old, you know, because it's such a young sport.
Yeah.
That it's finally, you know, getting old enough now that people are starting to look at the history a little bit and respect it a little bit more, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, things like D-Day, you know, coming around and doing stuff with Ranquet and with Chris Roach and stuff, you know. So, and, you know, like Brian Noguchi doing the arbor board. I think there's a niche out there for that stuff, you know. And it, you know, even like Chris Roach and those guys. Chris had his own construction business, you know, basically. You know? I swung a hammer for 15 years, but so.
I love that the love of the sport just brings everybody back to it, though. You just can't.
You can't, you know, that's funny. If you've snowboarded and you've ridden powder and you've ridden big mountains, you can't, you can put it away for a while, but you can't put it away forever, because it's just being up here. For me, it's like this whole spirit. It's almost like a spiritual thing, you know. It's like, it just makes me feel one with the earth, you know, like just being out here and just cruising around, you know, enjoying nature.
Better.
You know, it's gorgeous.
Fucking rad shoutouts this week to Dan Donnelly, Jeff Fulton, Mike Ranquet. Special thanks to Gwen Howitt from the Mount Baker ski area. You're the best. I had so much fun riding this week with Brett Tippy, Jamie Sherritt, Doya, Grady, and Kate, Andy and Liam from Pacific Border, Jason Hilton from K2 and Ride Snowboards Canada, and Steve from Burton, Canada. Thanks for the hookups on the Cypress passes, bro. That was awesome. And it was so much fun riding with all you guys. Most importantly, I want to thank my fiance, Terry Lynn, and my kids. You guys have been so supportive this month, and I couldn't do this podcast without you. I love you all, and I love shredding with you guys. It's so much fun. Kurt Heine is selling his prized personal snowboard collection to pay his medical bills. That just does not seem right. So if you've got some money, just go on Facebook and search out his GoFundMe and pledge some money to that shit. It's the right thing to do. FNRad's brought to you by BR Productions. And I'm inviting you back next week because we're going to have a whole new episode. Episode 6 kicks off the year 2016. Have a great week, you guys and girls.